Delving into the lives of Antarctica's giants.
There's two animals. Yep.
That is pretty amazing to be able to see them under the water. Hello, beautiful.
Humpback whales come 8,500 kilometers here to feed.
The Antarctic Peninsula, a brutal and fragile place, is a hotspot for marine wildlife.
Perfectly.
It kind of looks like play. They're just wild.
But this place is changing.
The climate is shifting in the Antarctic Peninsula faster than anywhere else in Antarctica.
We're with a team of wildlife scientists who are trying to find out how some of the biggest animals in these waters are responding.
Some populations around the world are getting skinny because they're not getting enough to eat because of climate change impacts.
Juby's coming up on the left, Mom's pooping.
We'll discover secrets that are hidden in the bodies of these huge marine mammals.
Liquid gold.
And why scientists need to be here to protect this vast icy wilderness. Today, the archive footage looks shocking. It shows our brutal history with Antarctica's whales.
The small whalers bring their catches to the mothership.
Some were driven to the brink of extinction by commercial whaling during the 20th century. That was banned 40 years ago, but research is now uncovering new threats to the future of these animals. That's why scientists make the long journey across the notoriously rough Southern Ocean to Antarctica.
Woke up to my nightstand crashing across the room because we'd hit apparently a 12-meter wave. I've never been in waves like that before.
Sarah is one of the wildlife biologists that we're travelling with. To reduce the impact and the expense of their research trip, she and the team are hitching a lift on a tourist ship.
The science and the tourists want to go to the same places where there are these hot spots of biodiversity of animals. And so we're going to the same places and get to do science at the same time.
We can see our first iceberg. That means Antarctica is getting very close now.
When we reach the peninsula, the waters calm and Antarctica reveals itself. The coldest continent on Earth. Hundreds of species depend on these cold, rich seas. The researchers we're following have special permits to study Antarctic whales up close.
Do it.
But first, they have to find them.
I heard something, but...
Natalia Botero Acosta has spent more than a decade studying humpback whales.
I think it's side swimming. It was like lifting a pack.
Her work stretches from the tropical waters of Colombia, where the whales breed, to the end of their 8,000-kilometre migration, Antarctica.
How is working in Antarctica for somebody from the tropics?
It's fascinating, but I do get cold. A lot.
When we spot a whale, Natalia reaches for a surprising piece of scientific equipment.
Tell me about the crossbow. Is that a weapon?
No, it's not a weapon by any means. It's a tool. It's a scientific tool. We use them to collect, blubber and skin samples. It goes with these bolts, modified too. At the very end of this, we screw a tip, maybe 3-centimeter tip, and then inside is like 3 barbs that hold the tissue. But this barrier sort of like prevents the bolt from going inside further and then bounces back into the water.
And this is how you get a tissue biopsy from a wild humpback whale. The tube on the end of the arrow takes just a tiny nick out of the animal's body.
The sample is, 3 centimeters, something like that for an animal. Obviously, 16 meters long. So it's essentially a mosquito bite.
Well, it clearly didn't bother them very much because they're hanging around the boat. Not just got a sample from Mum, is that right?
We got a sample from Mom, yeah.
She's still disturbed, thinks she's right here. That's what we came for.
One of the things the researchers can tell with this small nugget of tissue is if a female humpback is pregnant.
In years that we have low sea ice,
then the following year you have lower pregnancy rates. And that's as good as it gets in, like, getting to know the environment and getting to know the effects of all these conservation threats on the animals.
Working from a tourist boat means the team can reach and work in several sites around the Antarctic Peninsula. But it also means they have to improvise.
This is a tourist vessel, so it's not necessarily kitted out for scientific experiments. This isn't a lab, it's a storeroom. There's lots of stuff in here, kit bags, and there's costumes even for some of the staff, but it has become a laboratory for processing of these very precious samples of whale tissue.
Blubber, that like pinky whitish tissue, hormones accumulate there, and then the skin, which is like the black tissue.
Ooh, that's a good
That's
one.
a beautiful one.
Why is that a beautiful one? I mean, it looks
It's
great.
just a good chunk of blubber, and that's very valuable. Like, that means that you can probably do the hormone analysis, maybe even a couple of times, like get a couple extractions.
Analysing this blubber will reveal chemical clues about the health of the animal. The tiny piece of skin provides a genetic profile of each whale that the team studies. Whatever isn't needed for analysis will be cryopreserved, kept in very cold storage indefinitely. For now, the researchers have reserved space for their samples in an old freezer.
Good morning, folks. It's around 6:15 a.m.
Eating now 173.
It's 4 degrees Celsius or 39 degrees Fahrenheit. Now with very low winds.
Every day working here is precious, an opportunity to gather data in one of the richest, most productive parts of the Southern Ocean.
Everybody good?
And during this research trip, the team will have just 4 days in the peninsula.
So we are going to go that way.
Chris Johnson is from the World Wildlife Fund.
We were going to go this way, now we're going to go that way.
He's the charity's global lead on whale conservation. As we search, the weather closes in.
One of the best ways that we can find humpback whales in these conditions, when it's foggy and snowy, is actually listening. So we'll turn off the Zodiac engine, we'll close our eyes, and just listen for the blows. We'll hear big blows of humpback whales, and you can hear them for quite a far distance. So even though you'll hear them, it may take a while to find them. Ready?
There's another piece of kit to help in the search.
We're looking, using the drone, it's kind of our eyes in the sky to help us look for whales.
Using drones has transformed scientists' ability to observe these marine mammals.
We have these ocean giants all around us. Their pectoral fins are so white, it's really easy to follow them in this water.
This is much more than a beautiful aerial view. The team uses the drone to work out the humpback's weight from the length and width of their bodies.
We're measuring how fat it's becoming over the season, and that's really important because they're storing enough energy to make the long migration back to their breeding ground in the eastern tropical Pacific, and that's over 8,500 kilometers. So they've got to bulk up. Some populations around the world are getting skinny because they're not getting enough to eat because of climate change impacts.
One recent 20-year study of humpbacks in the North Pacific showed the population had declined because of a shortage of food that was linked to rising temperatures. It's why scientists monitor the whales here. What's happening to these hungry marine mammals is a signal of what's happening in the whole ocean ecosystem.
Climate change, from fisheries bycatch to vessel strikes and underwater noise pollution, it's all adding up long-term in terms of poor health. And that's what we're really concerned about.
This is why the whales come here to feed, Antarctic krill. Each just a few centimetres long, collectively there's an estimated 400 million tonnes of these crustaceans in the Southern Ocean. That's similar to the combined weight of every human on Earth.
Well, we think they're feeding on about 1 to 1.5 tons per day of Antarctic krill.
Per day?
Per day. And we've been underestimating that until the past few years when we've done this research.
There is a krill fishery here. Krill oil is used in some animal feed and supplements. There are strict catch limits to protect Antarctic wildlife, but conservationists are concerned about the extra pressure that fishing puts on the environment.
This work is helping us define where whales feed and why they're feeding and what are the most critical habitats for them on the Antarctic Peninsula, so we can make those no fishing zones.
These creatures are much more than whale food. They help keep the ocean healthy and our planet cool. Krill eat microscopic plants that grow in sea ice, plants that suck carbon out of the atmosphere. So these tiny animals, just by growing, eating and excreting, send planet-warming carbon to the bottom of this cold ocean. But climate change is warming the ocean, and since 2017, there's been a worrying decline in sea ice here.
That's why scientists need to come here to figure out what impact that's having on some of the biggest animals in these oceans.
One way to do that is to examine what's coming out of the animals that depend on krill.
Juby's coming up on the left, Mom's pooping.
Liquid gold.
Is that what I think it is?
It's exactly what you think it is, and it smells exactly like you think it would.
It's whale poo.
Whale poo, yeah.
Back aboard the ship, that precious specimen can be stored safely.
It is ripe. It's very ripe. But you can actually see little chunks floating in it, which was a surprise to me. I mean, I've never held whale poo before. You could also do all sorts of cool things like get hormones from poo. You can look at DNA.
Wow. And I mean, I suppose it's really difficult to find, right? Because you have to be next to a whale.
Right. And it's in the water, and it usually can just disperse really quickly. This one was a little bit harder and stayed clumped together in a way I wasn't expecting.
I love how you describe this.
Isn't it magical? And I was able to just take handfuls and smush it into the jar.
Well done.
Thank you.
This continent is unique. There's never been a war here. It's a land dedicated to science.
We can look at the data in Colombia, compare it with the Antarctic Peninsula, and be able to monitor the population the whole way.
The Antarctic Treaty is a global agreement drawn up more than 60 years ago that now has 56 signatories. It states that Antarctica will be used for peaceful purposes and scientific cooperation. One of those permitted peaceful purposes is tourism, and that's growing. Before the 1980s, just a few hundred people came here each year. In the summer season between 2022 and 23, more than 100,000 people visited.
And the kind of little boat shed on the shore there, that's now staff quarters.
Steffi is an expedition leader for a tour operator. It's her job to plan an Antarctic itinerary for the 200 people on board the ship that we're travelling on.
Weather, ice, changing dynamics. And the industry was designed when 100 passenger vessels were the larger ships. Okay, and now 100 passenger vessels are the smaller ships.
The International Association of Antarctic Tour Operators sets out guidelines for the industry, including restrictions on the numbers of people that can go ashore and keeping a safe distance from wildlife.
The plan was that we'd land here today, but it's not possible because there are too many penguins. The rules of the tourism are that everybody has to keep 5 meters away from the wildlife. And as you can see here, it's not actually possible to get out of a boat and be 5 meters away from a penguin.
Even with all the rules, tourism can leave its mark. Anyone visiting could unwittingly bring in seeds or microbes that don't belong here on their boots and clothes. There's even evidence of soot left on snow from ship exhaust. But according to the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, when people experience Antarctica in person, it can inspire them to protect it. And while the scientists are here to gather data, they're also sharing their findings and conservation messages with the passengers.
And we're going to talk a lot about good news. This is not going to be a bad news talk. You're going to be inspired by the end of it.
Is it strange in some ways to be on a tourist ship? What's that like for you? Because tourism is a pressure on this place too, isn't it?
It is. Tourism is something that we need to regulate closely. So we tend to work with operators where we can talk about conservation messages to the public. And one of the new things we're discovering is that whales are critical to ocean health. And so that type of partnership is really special. And it really helps us try to protect this incredible place that we have.
Coming here repeatedly means scientists can monitor this environment. It also means they capture some fascinating wildlife behaviour up close. In krill hotspots, these social, intelligent animals work together to gorge themselves.
Oh, this is fantastic.
Trapping their prey inside a net of bubbles.
They're blowing bubbles in a circle, and they're coming up right through the center of the bubble net to feed. It's absolutely spectacular.
Wow, look at that. That's such a cool... Hello, waving with a pectoral fin.
This animal is using its fins to feed.
It kind of looks like clay,
Yeah, it does.
but it's using its pectoral fin as a tool to sweep the krill in. It's just wild.
These playful giants seem to be engaged in an interspecies dance with a seal. The researchers want to identify and do what they can to protect wildlife hotspots around the peninsula.
That is pretty amazing to be able to see them under the water. Hello, beautiful.
My new favorite color is the blue of a humpback whale under the water. It's a very specific color. Nice. Oh, watch out. Sorry.
That's right.
I'm gonna ask Crayola to make that color for me.
We can even see evidence of close family bonds.
There's two animals. Humpbacks need their moms to care for them, you know, and navigate this kind of wild place.
While the researchers are curious about the whales,
Right here.
the whales seem curious about us too. They raise their heads above the water.
Oh my god!
Spy hopping to see what's going on.
Hey, Mom. Hey, beautiful. Mom looks like she's going to come under us. She's right under us. She's going to come up. Just hold on to the boat in case she touches the boat.
Oh, she's huge. Oh my word, I've never seen a humpback whale that close before in my life. I'm a little bit scared, I've got to admit. They are gigantic.
How did you feel when it went under the boat?
A little bit apprehensive. It's so beautiful. This is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. This might be the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Oh.
The team makes the most of every minute they have here.
So far we have 67 samples between this trip and the previous one. An amazing success. Last year in this same situation, 2 trips, we got 40.
Today is their last day. The more samples they can get, the more detailed picture they'll have of what's happening in this environment.
You gotta be patient, you gotta give the animals some space and understand their behavior, and you know, every now and then you actually get a result.
Is that a female? It's hard to say.
Didn't react, didn't make a big deal, so maybe a female.
Yeah. That's Natalia's test. Yeah, the males are like, you know, we're a little bit more anxious, you know. It's all right.
The end of an Antarctic expedition is a time for reflection.
I'm just grateful for the opportunity to just do what we do in a place like this, and just connecting data that is so important and so critical for humpbacks and for the ecosystem.
This trip was a chance to gather clues about this remote wilderness. Clues the researchers will use to build a picture of the health of this fragile place.
I'm at peace in this environment. I feel more connected to nature. We're getting this important data to bring to policymakers to make really important changes in international policy and protect this area for Antarctic krill, for humpbacks, for penguins. You know, this place is not only important for nature, but it's also important to us.
Just as marine wildlife depends on this place, so do we. This icy ocean cools our planet. So scientists will keep a check on its largest inhabitants, the whales. whose bodies hold clues about the effect we have on this precious environment.
I can't believe it's over. It seems like yesterday that we met in Ushuaia.
What an epic place. I mean, we have got perfect weather, amazing whales around us, and I think it's time to go home. So let's hit the road.
Yeah, there we go. That's it.
Let's do it. Okay. Let's go.
Oh,
so awesome. It's so awesome.
No tears on the boat.
No. It's been awesome. Awesome to have you.
What a beautiful place.